Welcome everybody to Mud Flood was Armageddon. Mud Flood was Armageddon. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. No fisticuffs, and usually without stretching the truth, strawmen in the way arguments. I got a link in there for my big brother Randy. I have like two shows really here today. I don't know what happened, but I started a show and then I wrote another show. And then, wouldn't you know, a few minutes ago, my brother Randy sent me a video from Theron. It's Toad House 7, Wheat and Tears. And I wrote down something and we'll look at it. And then we're going to get back into the couple of other things. Wheat and Tears from Theron. When I think I see a change of argument to I don't want someone to prove flat earth. That's what Theron, I think, alleges in this is that, oh, I was brutal on him in a video because I don't want him to prove flat earth. No. I didn't want him to try to waste time and money and maybe his life to prove there's a landmass the size of America at the North Pole where the camp of the saints will have to be or go someday. That was my argument, not that I don't need any proof that the earth is flat, that the water's level, we're under a dome. I don't even know where that's coming from, and I'm not going to address it. But I do know that there are some people that even if a man left Abraham's bosom to go back and tell his brothers and say, it's all real, they wouldn't believe him. Because they have Moses and the prophets. They have the scriptures. That's going to be a new cause of concern here before I get back going on all of this other stuff I have planned. So let's see if it'll play. And if anybody else thinks it's, unusual or maybe I misheard it, I hope it plays. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. He had just got done thinking I've been too brutal on him. I don't even know if there's any comments on that, but I doubt it.
For a person-like being standing before you who is of Satan. Okay, so not just like deceived, let's pray for them, like Jesus himself, okay, the men making it possible for there to be mercy on their souls is saying, you are of Satan. You are a brood of vipers. Get out of here. Now, I realize we don't have the same judgment ability as Jesus himself or God the Father. But at first, we at least want to make the case for why we believe there are those around us who are basically I guess we're talking about unsavable, some other entity that is not a person made in God's image that has a capacity to.
Okay, that's, and even if you're the only one here, Marcella, I mean, what did we just hear? That there are people around us not made in, God's image or formed in his image, and that they're, the brood of viper people. Let's listen to some more again and encourage people, if anybody, give me your comments on this.
The men making it possible for there to be mercy on their souls is saying, you are of Satan. You are a brood of vipers. Get out of here. Now, I realize we don't have the same judgment ability as Jesus himself or God the Father. But at first, we at least want to make the case for why we believe there are those around us who are basically I guess we're talking about unsavable, some other entity that is not a person made in God's image that has the capacity to choose him.
Right. And let me just thicken the plot a little there, because earlier in that passage, they said, who's your father? We're sons of Abraham. And Jesus does say, you are sons of Abraham, but you don't choose. So this is where there are things like that where I go, there's some ability for them to even claim a bloodline to Abraham, but yet still be sons of Satan. Right? Because so I don't know exactly how to do it.
Okay. Oh, so that.
Now, if that doesn't sound like when you're not busy planning a trip to the North Pole, you're going to be tracing people's genealogies back to Satan to deal with this Satan thing. So, no. Where was it? About 10:30, where in my thing, where this was a kind of an awkward thing.
Yeah.
She didn't listen to
write
me.
It down.
She forgot, and she put
I
packing
get
my
on
bags.
that exercise bike, and I just type something in for a title while I upload.
And Alan was pretty brutal. He was pretty brutal. So whatever. I want to go, and I think it's odd that people don't want us to verify these things. I want to verify with my own eyes, with my own ears. Hey, that's my own parents are like, why don't you go see these things that you think are there? Okay. So
yeah, go see these things, because you're talking about, you want to prove that there's a landmass the size of America at the North Pole, and that should be the camp of the saints, because you believe and teach that the millennial reign of Christ is over. As you've learned somewhere, you've picked it up along the way, and now you're going to expand upon it, prove it once and for all. And it's not so much that someone's afraid of you proving flat earth. We don't need that proof. The Bible just tells us the way it is, and our senses prove it. We have all the proof we need.
People that don't believe me are saying, go, prove to yourself that it's there or not there. And then the people that do believe, now Alan doesn't believe, say, no, it's there, but we can't see it, we can't do it, we can't know. And I'm like, I'm tired of all the sort of wiggly stuff.
People raise some really interesting questions, even if it is there. Can we access it at this point and with these bodies? And is it up in the air raised, or is it blocked via cherubim or whatever? I mean, there's lots of questions one could ask.
Kids are, this supposed to be short.
Okay, we totally.
It was earlier in the video where it was like, I don't want him to go to the proof flat earth, but it was really earlier about the whole the deal of, I just think it's a waste of time to try to go up there and prove that that's a camp of the saint. I thought the church was the video I made wasn't brutal, but it was just showing, here's why we don't need that. The camp of the saint doesn't mean it needs to be the size of Jerusalem or the size of the camp in the wilderness. Oh, yes, they were. I listened to that part, and this part is good. Seeing the wheats and the tares are good, but I don't think I was brutal on them. And my reason for making a video about why I don't think he should try to head to the North Pole in the wintertime is that it's dangerous. And then I went on to show them the verses that the camp of the saints is anywhere in the world where there's some people gathered, and that the camps are usually like castles or barracks. And most of the ones that they were talking about in those days are buried and still available in the, what is it, 90% of this earth that is unoccupied, where people will be able to live safely in what's coming. But if you see that, what does that even mean, Marcella? You're going to start saying that are the one thing I thought we weren't supposed to judge was who was going to end up in heaven or hell. In that, even someone, like a murderer, like the Apostle Paul or Moses, people who started out being changed after murder, or murder for David came later, but they're forgiven. Nobody could have, seen that coming, I don't think, or that, oh, they're tares, or this person's for sure a wheat. I just don't see that in scripture. And if you have the verses, please don't consider this attack or me being brutal. I just like to know where, we can judge them by their fruits and everything else. I get that part's clear to me. In this camp of the saints in 10 or 9 here, they marched around a camp of the saints. When you look at camp, it's barracks, it's castles, and we know that they are spread out in, brought him to the castle. That's helping him escape from a mob that was going to kill Paul. Brought to the castle, brought to the barracks, in Acts 23, the barracks, the castle, encompass the barracks or the castle of the saints about. It's not that tricky. The camp of the saints is not at the North Pole. And I think that the absolutely weak argument that there is going to be, that the camp of the saints is at the North Pole is dangerous. And, no, I don't think that they're saying I am a terror. No, I don't feel that. But I still do think that this is, still kind of him flirting around with a way to take a boat to the North Pole. And I think we can all agree that's not going to be allowed by the powers that be. And we really don't need it to prove flat Earth. And I don't think anybody can prove that we need to be looking at the North Pole as the place to camp of the saints where we need to run to. It's not going to be that hard. If they in the past had to worry about, I hope it's not in the wintertime. Well, let's just flee to a place where supposedly it's not winter all the time. But no, I don't, I want, I don't think they're attacking me, and I am not attacking them. Hola, Mr. Joe. Let's see. Tares are the angels' business. Yes, let the righteous remain righteous. Yeah, Revelation 18:4. You got it. Yeah, it does seem like that, the flat earth thing is kind of worn off, that thrill. But that thrill was brought out and helped by the thumbnail of the video, the guy that said, "Why did I call it Mudflood?" That's from Philip Derizian, and he didn't name it Mudflood. Sylvia Ianova from New Earth Channel, coined that term, and 2014. And I referenced it in a video to Philip, I think in 2015. I said some Mudflood advice for a space cowboy or something like that. That channel has long been taken down, but Philip didn't come up with that, and neither did I. But that's a big part of what I was going to talk about tonight, because, you know, in 2024, when they came out with Flat Earth, and I'm going to be talking about Stellium 7 and his friends tonight, about how it's getting more suspicious to me now that, you know, well, for crying out loud, Alex Jones just had one of his guys put out a video about the helical heart and how the stones are crying out. And, you know, well, that was what Randy and I talked to Mike, Stellium 7, on the phone and explained it to him in a time of like, yay, we just figured it out and discovered it. And he was right there that day. I mean, we documented it. We still have the phone, his phone number, the call, and the time of the call, everything, where we laid it out to him. But, you know, those days are gone of any shared thing now. It's all about, forget about God, as the flat earth banjo, or whoever, not flat earth banjo Japan, but the flat earth musician from down under, the one that doesn't like God, started helping him prove that the stones were trees and everything else. Anything to keep it away from the God. They're not going to be able to, after, you know, have me wake up tomorrow and go, gee whiz, I wonder if the earth is flat and the Bible's true. As I've shared before, tonight's the night I'm going to go over. I've got about as short of a rehash of my vision that brought, you know, because, you know, I'll be able to answer a question from, you know, the comments. How did, you know, what made you discover, you know, flat earth or Mudflood or whatever it was? And I'm not going to shy away from the fact that there were mushrooms or LSD involved, because that would be lying. That's a big part of my life, and it always has been. And it is something that 12 years ago, when this started and I approached the VA and everybody else, it's always been a thing that there is more scientific evidence from the people in their peer-reviewed things that treating these people that claim to have depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, these things are worked better with mushrooms and psilocybin than they are with some of the recommended medicines they do. Now, I've never recommended anybody else do it, but this is something older than your generation or your parents or your grandparents. And this is what has worked. So I may as well read this now, because let's look at the pictures. Let's look at the pictures, and then maybe I'll read it. The pictures should be good. I know I like them. So there's now come on. Is it only going the wrong way? Okay, so good. There it is. I want to know how you came to that conclusion about Mudflood was Armageddon, because he's got, he's got some idea that it was Revelation 12, and that it was when Satan had spewed the flood out of his mouth, or, so I've got that answered here tonight too. Saw Conspiracy R Us's new video, and he put, very interesting stuff about the first lost colony of Roanoke. And I thought that he would mention Virginia Dare, but he's not the world. And it is the world that makes a big deal about Virginia Dare. But actually, wouldn't it be nice to know what it's like to be Conspiracy R Us? I mean, he's like better than Babe Ruth. Like he hits a home run every time. It's truly amazing. So anyway, this looked weird. Doesn't that look weird that they changed that date? Somebody changed that date? It looks weird to me. Come on now. Come on, people now. Smile at your brother. Yeah, it just looked weird. I mean, at first it looked like 35, now 95, could be 85, no, 95 or 35, 15, 85, or so they say. Wait, okay. But anyway, Virginia Dare, everybody loves her. Everybody thinks it's the coolest thing in the whole world. We got these Ragminster Chaton. He's wearing Tudor clothes. The very interesting coppery brass. Hey, look, they got the whole alphabet there. That's amazing. Isn't this supposed to be 1585? They don't have the whole alphabet, I hear you say. Well, you are correct. As I look down at the bottom line, where are you? Oh, I know where you are. And I see where the W is next to the V on its left as you look at it. But after the T, the ST, no U. Weird. And yet, I can think of on the top of my head one or two courthouses in America, and I know there are hundreds, but I can only think of a couple that have a V in its courthouse, and they're only supposed to be about 140 years old, 100 years old, some of them. It's we got mysteries here going on. My reading, when I start the reading, it's going to say, I clearly treasure the memory more as I inch closer to death. As I had most weekends free on from my military obligation, I looked around and looked forward to Bible study with minimal distractions. I took my LSD and selected my textual criticism started my textual criticism of the Bible before waiting to feel any effects from the psilocybins. I think, or the psychotropics. I think it was called blue dot or orange dot mescaline at the time. This was 1981 or 1982. It's all documented somewhere on file. Anyway, in this picture, I'm looking at something here. I have it highlighted. Look how they have this, they would have us believe that all of Romanian history and their language, which you're going to find surprisingly interesting and captivating. And what do they like to say? It'll just be mind-boggling from that moment. So won't that be interesting to find that, according to Theophanes, the confessor's chronology during the Byzantine campaign against the Avars, once again, the Bulgarian mountains in 1587, the soldier shouted to his comrade the phrase, "Turn, turn, brother, come back, brother," a phrase that historians have identified. They found the guy, Georgie, and have identified it as the first written record of Romanian spoken in the Balkans in the 5th century. Wow. Apart from a few unbound fragments, whereas, they have books and books and books of everything. They got this preserved in a Roman letter written in 1521 to Nicosu de Camplion and addressed to a judge from this city, that city, in which he warned him about Turkish military movements in Wallachia. From that moment, the Romanian language became more widespread. We'll get to the bottom of that. But, big time drug trafficker This is somebody from World War II. I finally wanted to, look into because I stumbled across the do you ever hear that? Like, you never do that thing called like name your tune or name that tune where it goes bum 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 bum. It's supposed to be Chariots of Fire. Yeah, everybody knows that song, and my algorithm and the Lord confirmed that I should check out this one video about the Olympics in London. And it turned out to be a gold mine. The guy that they made the Chariots of Fire about that wouldn't run on a Sunday ties in so well with that whole John Birch story, because he claims that, that same thing of I was a missionary in Japan at the same time. Well, after the 36 Olympics, the guy I believe that was a real missionary ended up in prison for 3 years dying, because the Japanese rounded them all up, but not the John Birch and the founder of, the guy that the first martyr of World War III is what the John Birch Society. And of course, that ties into the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, but back to the pictures. Here's this guy here. In case I don't get to it, at least we'll have learned this. As fate would have it, a pistol-packing Catholic bishop, Thomas M. Megan, ran an agent net in the Henan province. Isn't this like the longest introduction in history? Including the Ding Fang city throughout World War II. We're talking about the pistol-packing Tommy Megan, the personification of the church militant. Megan had arrived in China from Iowa in 1926 as part of the Divine Word Society. Do not worry, we'll look into that. In 1936, he was placed in charge of building hospitals in the Henan province, and in 1937 was made I can't believe this. Now, wait a minute. He's a pistol-packing Roman Catholic apostolic bishop in Muslim-populated Xinjiang city. I know I'm fairly decent at enunciation, but what do they expect from one man? In 1940, at the behest of the evil Vatican Congregation of Propaganda, yes, in 1940, there was a congregation of propaganda at the Vatican, and when they asked you to behest, you'd best treat it as an offer you can't refuse. Big time drug trafficker, that KTM, think KGB, CIA. Maybe we'll learn a little bit more about him. Maybe we won't. But under the terms of Japanese surrender, the Japanese army was ordered to continue occupying the areas it controlled. That's a very unusual order, isn't it? At the end of formal hostilities, Birch, that's John Birch, in this mysterious situation of being a Lee Harvey Oswald type, a Lee Harvey Oswald patsy type, he was getting set up by this guy Chenault, you know that Chenault. Well, always goes back to the drug running Catholics, because those guys, what do you think they were humping over the Burma when they were flying those flights, baby? Come on. Under the terms of the Japanese surrender, the Japanese army was ordered to continue occupying the areas so that they could turn it over to the communists, as what happened after all those years of the United States helping the nationalists with the OSS and John Birch and Wild Bill Donovan and the rest. This was a setup. under the terms of the surrender, you will occupy, and I assume that means defend, the areas it controlled until they could be surrendered to the nationalist government. But that wasn't going to happen. Even in places where the Chinese government-led government had been the de facto, but not de jure, because we're talking communist. You know, in fact, they've been in power, although Japan and the nationalists didn't consider them legal. Well, they considered themselves legal. To them, they were de jure state for over a decade. This led to continued fighting with the Chinese communists, sought to expel all the Japanese. Big backfire. John Birch got killed. But the last sentence in his diary, OSS Major Gustav Cruz, who we'll run into again, Lord willing, commanding officer of one of the 3 air bases in China, now in command of Captain Birch. Hold on. This rapid promotion for someone who didn't even get connected with the military until the person that first bombed Tokyo, the Doolittle raid, he bailed out, and guess who found him? Guess who? Well, one of John Birch's friends led him to John Birch, and John Birch took him to the only person he knew, the drug-running Major Chenault. Well, and the rest is history. It's a star for it, baby. Want to read this later, or you want to read it now? Born, husband, missionary, senior year, organized a secret fellowship group. Okay, well, that sounds like he was early into starting secret fellowship groups. Went back to China as a missionary in 1940 because he was born there as a baby. And it wasn't anything to do with the military that he went there in 1940. Okay, sure. And was caught, stuck there by Pearl Harbor, couldn't leave in 1942 when the Chariots of Fire missionary was thrown in prison in 1942 as he was trying to find a way to enlist. The war literally dropped on him as he was taken one night by a native to a man who had fallen out of the sky, the famous Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle. Birch led Doolittle and a group of the survivors of the Tokyo raid to safety, then joined the unit that later became the accused drug running Claire Chennault's 14th Air Force, running drugs allegedly out of that Bermuda Triangle, brand new, because it's always about the deal of making money, run by the mafia and things like that. So they pumped him up with medals. Now, notice in the article in the newspaper, they don't mention that Major Gustav worked for the future CIA, the OSS. In his diary, OSS Major Gustav Cruz, commanding officer, gave this review of the future patsy, John Birch. He said, Birch is a good officer, but I am afraid he's too brash and may run into trouble. Isn't it funny? That's exactly what happened when, after the Japanese were surrendered, Birch led a routine mission, yay, the United States and the nationalists won. We won. Fair, square war. So they went on a routine mission to discover where's those Chinese communists? How far to the south are they? So he bumped into a group of Chinese communist force. Why would they expect the Chinese communists to treat him well? His group bumped into Chinese communists. At the scene, Birch argued violently with the communist officer who wanted to disarm him. Birch was seized and shot after his hands had been tied. It's said the communists then bayoneted him at least 15 times and tossed his body on a heap of junk and garbage. The newspaper at the time says John Birch brought about his own death. Because I guess he was there in the confusing situation. Because remember, he was with a group of people, maybe, I don't know, crews last week. My instructions were to act with diplomacy. Birch made the communist lieutenant lose face before his men. Militarily, John Birch brought about his own death. Thus, in his lifetime, John Birch was a legitimate hero. But in both his life and death, he was almost as controversial as the organization. Oh my goodness. So anyway, we got the Birch Society named after John Birch. What do they think? The idea of martyrdom comes because he was killed by communists, making him the first victim of World War III. This hideous act was hidden by the communist sympathizers within our own government. So I guess they tried to hide the fact that, you know, John Birch was a patsy, got set up, and like, oh my goodness. But during the war, it was all about China was our best friend. They were one of the big four. It was Churchill, Stalin, Chiang Kai-shek, and FDR. But you knew that. So I guess there's some more pictures that are going to prove to you that the United States and China were great friends. Famous airplane, all scary looking. Foreign person has come to China to help in war. Soldiers and civilian, one and all, should rescue, protect, and provide him with medical care. So these were passed out, you know, like, don't forget the U.S.-China agreement with the nationalists, and help these downed pilots if you find them. We were their friends. They were still fighting the communists. Chiang Kai-shek was one of the big dogs in the whole war. Could count on them to do everything right up into the 1944. That's like a year and a half to go in the war. World War II did not last very long. You spent more time studying it than the war actually lasted. Aircraft fuel dump, those 55-gallon drums. Yeah, don't worry, everybody goose-stepped. I'm breaking rocks like they did back in the colonial days to make a road, a landing strip. We must defeat those Germans. That's enough. You know, the whole country's a star fort. And this is the first hint we get to see of anything that's, you know, that our allies, China, were, you know, fairly modern like everyone else. Look at that. Oh boy, we're teaching them how to fight. Look at a little build a mini Great Wall of China. Is that what's got going on here? Scale model of the Great Wall of China? Well, they sure had a lot of time in China in between building breaking rocks to build landing strips. So there they are it became a star fort city after Japan surrendered, but still occupied until they got that settled in the whole thing. And are you going to be nationalists or communists? Yikes. Whoa. So this is the internment camp where Eric Lidle, the Olympic runner in the 1936 Olympics, and person I believe probably was a true missionary, and a lot of other people ended up in this camp and had to be rescued. They were there from March. I thought it was earlier, 1943 until October 1945. 2 months after the war. The so-called atomic weapons, weren't they dropped on August 6th and August 9th of 1945? That's a long time when you're in prison. Majority of the people in the camp were British, but also the American, Canadian, Australian, a number. The 350 children, but not John Birch. He somehow scooted out to the north. There it is. Is it part of a star fort? I can't tell. They didn't give us enough to work with, but it looks, like it could be. There's a mission compound, former internment camp. Before that, before the internment camp, it was the school where they taught. They became prisoners where they taught. So what's the whole deal with John Birch? I looked that up. I don't want to watch any videos. Birch, now a captain, second in command of the, like I said, went back in a missionary in 1940, accidentally bumped into somebody whenever Jimmy Doolittle did his thing. That was late in the war. The next thing you know, he's a captain and he's in charge of military bases. That's jumping it right up there. And this is that de facto government area there, but under terms, the Japanese ordered to continue occupying. The communist government had been the de facto state. This led to continued fighting as the Chinese communists sought to expel all Japanese imperial forces, which it perceived to include U.S. personnel, who were then openly collaborating with the remaining Japanese forces. Who was? The U.S. personnel. And then that's when he just got into a shootout for no apparent reason, thinking that the communists, who have not been on their side from the beginning, would all of a sudden lay down their arms and surrender. And his commanding officers going like, yes, he was a brave hero, but I've warned him so many times. Now we've got an article here about the pistol packing priest. Let's get back up to the top and see what's going on here. This is from this is about a guy from 1991 with his family going over, well, what the hell happened there in 1969 and earlier, because I guess they had a little bit of a breakout. Oh my goodness, what's this? Somebody's saying, it is, oh my goodness, let's just pick it up right here. On Easter Sunday, 1970, we took LSD and trudged through foot-deep snow to Mohawk Cliffs to watch the sun rise over the Hudson River Valley while peeling and eating Easter eggs. His mother had dyed purple and yellow. Seth was 6'4", 225 pounds, a gentle giant who looked like Adonis. In the early 1970s, I went to San Francisco and moved to New York, where he shared a cavernous loft with two major dancers. Yeah, I had to work through this part, going like, where is this going? Because I had seen this picture. And so something came back, of like, they got, they both went on, became, serious studiers. The LSD didn't hold back their career or anything else. Now they're studying Chinese history and everything else. They're getting confused. What's going on with that opium trade in Japanese occupied Manchuria? Oh my goodness, And this is 1985, and they're just looking back at their own life. Like, I'm 65. I was born, when there were 48 states. As fate would prove it, he came to the rescue. Somehow we get, Iowa 1926, Divine Word Society. Isn't this intriguing here? Remember Tommy Megan? He almost certainly knew of the Black Dragon Agent Doshin So. Come on, these mafia. I mean, don't they make good movies when they finally tell you the truth about what happened? Megan operated out of the Seventh-day Adventist compound. I don't think they were being used as a concentration camp. Are you smiling on your brother? So here is that Society of the Divine Word. Society of the Divine Word. I couldn't take any more. Still in operation. Supposedly consists today of around 6,000 priests and religious brothers in more than 70 countries. That does seem like a lot. They were the Catholics that helped that other uprising. So they're in China. They're established there. In 1882, the society started sending missionaries to Shandong. I'm saying, hey, I wouldn't be surprised if we find out they're connected to the opium trade. Some of them, anyway. Some of the wolves and the sheep's clothing. Yeah, I trust this guy. Founder of this Society of the Divine Word. Many religious orders and congregations have certain characteristics and trait that make them known. The Divine Word missionaries are recognized for the Bible, missionary animation, acting, communication, justice, peace, and integrity, creation. Wow, that's 4 things to be known of. They take vows. They don't probably take them serious, I wouldn't think. But anyway, these are the groups now. I've shown you earlier Golden Age Productions. The Golden Age past has shown you that this is the group that's putting out those reconfirmed virgins and all of these other, different type of situations of who they ordain and how they do it. So, and they're still set up in the old Mudflood buildings around Chicago, just like in, Chicago, where the world's largest homeschool was that I worked for and started our ministries. It's where Willow Creek is from, within 25 miles of all of these. It's where Walk in the Word Ministries with James McDonald started. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on there. The Divine Society, and anyway, they can get that whole, remotivated virgins. It's quite a long, they're out there, they're active, they're in the world, they're changing lives, they're having them cling to tradition and someday set up with, a false religion that'll keep them happy for a while. The pontifical right is what it turns out that these sacred congregation for consultations about regulars and, what we just looked at, these things, they all come from, in 1816, begin to approve congregations with simple vows. Let's go back to the start and learn about, not only could they take over colonies and do this and that, they had what they call the pontifical right, the term given to ecclesiastical institutions either created by the Pope or approved by it with the formal decree known by the Latin name Decretum Laudis, a decree of praise. We like what you're doing over there. You've got the pontifical right. It only started in the 1800s, but they don't care. They say it's based on something from back in the day. I still don't believe it. I don't like it, but it's how they get away with what they get away with. This 1586 establishments, I'm sure I didn't just get there from here. I wanted to show you one of the dicasteries of institutes of consecrated life and the societies of apostle life. That's just one of those created by pontifical right. We'll just look at it. It says in 1857, founded this. What did they do? Responsible for everything which concerns religious orders and congregations, has no territorial limits, although it has to, be, if you're going to mess with other Vatican congregations, you will be remanded. So 1994, it looks like it's reactivated, re-energized. They're back in business. They got a year of consecrated life, and 10 years ago, where were you? What were you? Remember the housing market seemed to have settled down because those banks that were too big to fail just opened up their doors and things went on like nothing had really happened. Just the debt kept growing and the quantitative easing is strangling you as you're metaphorically a frog in hot water with the heat turned up. We're going to, it seems I have shown up to do my show with no water, and I need to remedy that. What I'll do is I'll go back, and can't be that long ago that I watched the thing about Conspiracy R Us. So I'm going to share the screen with that.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another video. Today we're going to be talking about lost colonies and what may have actually happened to them, because I've got my own ideas, but one of the most infamous of the lost colonies is the lost colony of Roanoke. Now, just for a little bit of background, approximately in 1587, a group of 117 colonists came to the island, and I think it was about 3 years after that, Captain White returns to Roanoke Island to find the colony gone. And then in 1602, another attempt is made to locate the colony, but to no avail. And one of the things that they did discover was the name Croatoan carved into a tree. Now, there's been some interesting developments in the last decade or so, but generally considered a bit of a mystery. But one of the developments in 2012, I believe, somebody noticed an anomaly or a potential anomaly on this map from 1585. And the map was studied a bit further, and I believe it was ultraviolet light that was applied to the map, and they could tell that there was a patch actually stuck to the map, which when enhanced with ultraviolet light showed what appeared to be a fort. And I believe this area here, which isn't too far from Roanoke, is referred to as Site X, Salmon Creek. So that was one of the developments. And again, it's speculated that the colonists may have gone to this area. And also there is an island not too far from Roanoke Island called, in our present day, it's called Hatteras Island. But when you look at this same map from 1585, that island, Hatteras Island, is actually labeled as Croatoan Island. So maybe they did come to this island and integrate with the native peoples of the area. So a lot of speculations. I just wanted to give you a brief overview. But I think that what happened to a lot of these areas is that they were greatly affected by this more recent destructive event that I allude to in a lot of my videos, but it's not in our history and it's actively being covered up. So I want to get into why I think that. So if we go back to Roanoke Island, there's been this reconstructed earthwork, and the name of that site on the island is called Fort Raleigh National Historic Site. But there's been a lot of archaeology done in this area and on other parts of the island. And one of the more recent finds, I believe in 2016, they started finding European porcelain, in particular this blue and white Dutch pottery, which I've seen at other sites. I've seen it in the context where it's buried, 3 or 4 feet. And they found some of this stuff on Roanoke Island. And when you look into this type of porcelain, turns out that throughout the 16 and 1700s, the name of this type of porcelain is called Delftware. It was the most common type of ceramic export to the American colonies. So as I was looking at other sites, including Charleston, and once again, it was decided to build on top of the previous colonial period site. And there have been excavations in Charleston where they have been exposing parts of these walls, and some of them extend down 9 feet below grade. But during those excavations, they've also found plenty of this blue and white pottery. Many pieces of early Delftware have been found, including during this dig. So again, I think the reason why this particular site is buried was due to this event, not due to intentionally just burying it. So that's my view on that. And even if you go outside of Charleston, several miles to Drayton Hall, beneath this structure, they were doing excavations below the basement, and they found one of these Delft flower urns. Here's just another image of this Delft urn, but again, found below the basement. And I think the reason why all this stuff is buried is because of this unknown event. And a lot of this stuff comes from the Netherlands, and I've talked about in some of the different cities, including Groningen, there are features and structures that appear on maps from the 1600s above grade, but are now 3 or 4 feet below grade. So I think, again, something's happened. So that's one of the artifacts that's interests me. Another thing they found on Roanoke Island are 3 of these tokens. And these tokens in particular, they come from Nuremberg, Germany. And why I'm interested in these tokens is because they show up at a lot of other sites, early colonial period sites, and they're also buried. But these tokens, they're used in conjunction with a counting board, and there would be a grid drawn on this board, and these tokens would be placed on various points of this counting board, and there would be numbers on the side of this, and you could perform calculations. So like an abacus, this is what these tokens were used for. And another name for them is jettons. And this is just a woodcut of one of these counting boards. So I just wanted to add that. But also, sadly, very few examples of these counting tables exist to the present day. So maybe they've been repurposed, but just wanted to give you a bit of background on function and use of these tokens. And the great majority of these tokens found at a lot of these archaeological sites are from Nuremberg, Germany. But these tokens have also been found on Hatteras Island, and again buried. And again, this has been labeled as Croatoan Island on the 1585 map. But they found another one of these Nuremberg tokens, and also a smelted bronze Tudor rose, which likely came from a horse bridle. So a reference to the Tudors again. And I've touched upon how I think there was a lot of destruction during that period. So I think it's an interesting tie-in. But according to the official narrative, archaeologists suspect that colonists moved to this island, which is now called Hatteras Island, after carving the village's name in a tree. But here you can see some of these digs. I think these sites were buried during this unknown event, but they found another one of these tokens, and it is identical to the 3 tokens found on Roanoke Island. Now, they also find these tokens identical to the ones at the first 2 sites I mentioned at Jamestown. And again, Jamestown isn't too far away from the lost colony of Roanoke. And during excavations at Jamestown, which I talk about a lot, but just as a refresher, once again, this James Fort, it was abandoned and thought to have been lost to the James River, but it was rediscovered in the 1990s. But during more recent excavations, more than 500 of those tokens or Jettons as they're called, that were made in Nuremberg, Germany, have been found in the features of the James Fort, and it's the largest number of Jettons recovered from a single site in all of North America. And what I want to mention is these Jettons or tokens, they come in a few different varieties, and one of them in particular is fairly interesting. It's got an alphabet on one side, but it also has a man behind one of these counting tables, but the man is in Tudor dress. So again, a connection to the Tudor period as well. And I think this destructive event would have affected a lot of these Tudor sites as well. And it's interesting to me that the dissolution of the monasteries happens under Henry VIII during the Tudor period. A lot of them appear destroyed. So I think this might have also occurred during this more recent destructive event. So it's interesting to me that you have these buried tokens all the way in North America featuring, these depictions of a man wearing Tudor dress. And there's been programs talking.
It does look like in this picture, he's trying to set up, like, imagine these are Cheerios. You used to play those games of, like, he's putting him in how many different ways can you make a triangle? Can you, can you change the arrow that this one is pointing where, like if you took this one and slid it here to make the base of 3, and then took this Cheerio and put it here, now that it's pointing the other way and you've only moved 2 Cheerios, it looks like he's playing that game that, we used to all play when we were kids.
Man wearing Tudor dress. And there's been programs talking about the lost palaces of Henry VIII. So yeah, I think we're looking at just this overarching event and false history laid on top of this event to explain away all these buried sites, in my opinion. And just one last site I want to touch upon is a barrier island, coast of Georgia, St. Catherine's Island. And there was a mission there, but the mission site on St. Catherine Island was considered lost. And it was, according to the narrative, by the middle of the 1700s, all traces of the mission's existence had disappeared. But they've rediscovered this site in the 1980s. But once again, just tons of artifacts. Archaeologists discover over 2 million artifacts from the site, and a lot of these glass beads were found. Approximately 70,000 glass beads from all over the world have been unearthed. So there was trading going on. There was this early colonial period, but I think it's even older than the date that it's typically assigned to. And I think it may have had a different history. We've been given like an overlaid history on top of these sites, in my opinion. And speaking about the early colonial period, I talked about that study that came out in 2008, basically talking about how parts of the eastern United States were drowned in mud, and it was all due to the early colonists. And that's the reason why you have these streams and rivers, all the accumulation of this sediment, which is referred to as legacy sediment. So you have a whole new grade, a new ground level, and it's chalked up to the activities of the colonists. So I think we're looking at this unknown event, and it's explained away by all these different narratives, including the lost colony of Roanoke. So that's my view. I just wanted to touch upon some of these colonies and sort of just go through that briefly. But I think that's about all I got for you for today. I do want to give a big shout out to my channel members.
Man, I'm telling you, that is some exciting turn of events. This guy, my lunch break, he's another one that is like, I get it. They do a video once a week and you think it's supposed to be good. And really, those guys that Joe Nugent mentions in the comment right above this one, Conspiracy RS and My Lunch Break, something setting them way up right now, I think. And Conspiracy RS, again, is, I think, at the very top. I clearly treasure the memory more as I inch closer to death, as I have as I had most weekends free from my military obligations, I looked forward to studying the Bible with minimal distractions. I knew that my roommates would all be going out for the weekend. So I looked forward to Bible study. I took some LSD, I think, psychotropics, and started reading right away the Bible. You know, I didn't wait till I saw some trails or felt something, because back in the day, nobody saw demons. You know, we didn't see clowns. We didn't have this DMT or whatever's causing the whole, like I saw clowns things. I've said it before. I stand behind mushrooms, psilocybin, and even LSD in the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder and these depressions and a lot of other things. When the science proves it, and I mean real science, not like we went to the moon, Alice type science. So it'd be a lie if I didn't admit, it's a big part of my past. I was asked earlier, how did you come to the conclusion that Mudflood was Armageddon? And, it was. Back in the day, it was Sylvia Ianova, Age of Disclosure, Wise Up, Philip Derizian, and me. And those other yahoos that are still out there hawking Atlantis and everything else. Everyone else is a Johnny come lately, except for Roger Spur, but he's not in the flat earth movement. In Age of Disclosure, she's not in the flat earth movement anymore either. So take all her few good works, throw them out. I think it was Blue Dot or Orange Dot mescaline at the time. I don't know. It was the early 70s. So that was probably it. It's documented somewhere. Didn't make this up. It's always the same story. I kept no track of time for 4 or more hours. I took no track of time for 4 or more hours. That's the poet in me. And yes, I did that on purpose because I'm turning a page. You know how I like to, well, they say it's like walking through a door. So you got to turn the page and then start fresh. As if it was yesterday, I can look back and see myself sitting on my bunk. My bed was the first corner on the right of a 6-man room, which was nice because when you opened the door, you'd walk past and not even look to the right. So I was there. I didn't know how long I had studied the Bible that night before I closed the Bible and said out loud to myself, I can't find one thing wrong with anything Jesus Christ has said in this book. I then became cocooned slowly but consistently until I was lying down flat on my bed, on my back, in the best I can describe it is as an electrical vortex cocoon. For lack of a better expression, I was floating. I was rewarded somehow with love. It felt like a puppy being rubbed behind the ears for eternity. I've never known love before. But I never thought, why me? Or sometime in this predicament, my mind was remembering what I said that triggered this unfolding event. I said, I can't find one thing wrong with anything Jesus Christ said in this book. Comforted with that turn of events, I started thinking of questions on that line of Occam's razor. So many questions answered so fast, I only remember the last. So many questions answered so fast, I only remember the last. You know, I'm turning the page soon, right? And to live assured and trusting Scripture as true for the rest of my life. Pop. There goes the cocoon. As soon as I realized I'm supposed to trust and live as if I believe every word of Jesus Christ for the rest of my life, pop. There goes the balloon. There goes the cocoon. There goes the electrical vortex spinning in infinity with an infinite Analiba Mobius strips just somehow causing friction against each other that have seemingly elevated me off the bed. And it seemed as if, you know, one thing that never has happened before since, any effects of LSD just left me. And at that time, Dan and Bobby came back in to the room. They were intoxicated and got into a fight because Dan thought Bobby should be called Bob and Bobby sounded gay. Turned out Bobby thought he might have been gay and he checked himself into a hospital. And turns out he wasn't gay, but I never saw him again. And shortly after that, Lance Peterson, who I was in the 82nd Airborne in and was jumping out of planes, but, you know, I transferred to the 17th Airborne Support. He ended up in my platoon after this. And it really, he was like he was my little brother, like Randy's my big brother. And, you know, spent the rest of our time keeping our vows to God. And, you know, sure wasn't going to find no wife in Fort Bragg, now called Fort Liberty, because Fort Bragg was a Confederate general. And I get it. Change that name. So anyway, Lance and I ended up working on the first GPS. We were surveyors. They don't even have that anymore. Not enough people even know how to do trigonometry, but we were surveyors in the Army in the 82nd, and we ended up doing what was the GPS together with Sergeant Blazina and Sergeant Gavin and some other tripped out sergeant. I can't remember it, but the only thing I remember of it is that he could read faster than anybody I'd ever seen in my life, and we could all read pretty fast. This guy is 50 times faster than everybody. And it's all traceable because it's the true truth that I'm telling you. I ended up being constrained by love for my whole life, proving all my life that the Scriptures was true. The last one was light seemed easy to me. Was it particle? Was it wave? It took a day. I wrote a book about it. As a matter of fact, I turned that book into a novel about people who were hiding from a virus. And then the next thing you know, they were bringing their children out of tunnels. And another group was in charge of releasing information. That book was written in 2008. I promise you that. But I was left praying, how could the stones cry out on the day of the triumphal entry? Because that was not poetic language. And that's what Jesus said was true. That if they didn't say, Hosanna, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, then it was all a lie. But it happened, and Jesus had to let it happen. He could have silenced them. And he said, no, this has to happen or the stones will cry out. Well, the rocks did cry out. From that, I was physically able to realize, and I was led to the glittering sword and Noah's flood, and eventually realizing that they're going to physically, audibly, with spoken words, shockingly, I knew it had to be possible, but how? One explanation was possible after walking again on the edge of Occam's razor of horror. I knew how a snail crawled over a razor without getting cut. After many days and many ways, I was able to walk to physical gold because I knew that the rocks that could have cried out and screamed out, set me free, release me from this judgment, for the anointed Messiah has failed to fulfill a prophecy. But there were 4 types of flesh. And I remember the water has a memory, and the glittering sword. And it struck the water, and it said nobody drowned in the flood, yet they all perished and were reserved in judgment. Sensory overload. I looked for the rocks in 3D and prayed for a vision that I could see the rocks as body parts every time, and it happened. It has led me to even try harder to present my body as a living temple, a place that even now I'm building up gold, silver, and precious stones because of times like these. I can't deny, I only am trying to seek and prove that the Lord Jesus Christ has at least lifted my burden of sins, knowing from Scripture. Now, this is important. Knowing from Scripture in Psalm 82 that the Elohim and their offspring would die like men in Noah's flood. So we're looking at a whole wide range of people. So I'm thinking that their bodies were turned to stones by the glittering sword. They would float like logs of lumber. The Elohim and their offspring would die like men in Noah's flood. And I assumed they would float like wood. I looked at Victor Schauberger's log flumes, and I pictured the flat earth flooded. And I had to imagine that those portals of the deep, that there were at least 4 of them. Again, I was assuming. And they were draining over that after the water filled up 150 days. It took a long time and slowly to drain it, so no whirlpools. How would the lumber and the sticks and everything gather, along with the loose rocks that would be stuck on top, were still degrading as it slowly drained? How would the large and small bodies interact? I traced them thinking, because I was near the Colorado River. I was using the Colorado River, is that after it got down to what would eventually solidify into the mountain ranges, the Colorado River was right there. And I just pictured it as a great big Victor Schauberger log flume. And where would the more heavier, because it comes down to the weights in the water, where would the heavier Nephilim, or where would the jewel encrusted body parts, kind of be flung off? And it turns out it would be, as you look at the river going south, on the right hand of a left turn in the river. And so 5 for 5, I went out and found the stones that had the gold and the gemstones. And that was enough for RJ from Wisconsin, my big brother, the famous Randy from Wisconsin. And we speculated, fabricated, facilitated a plan to prove the helical heart and the stones were the body parts and the organs. And so we figured go big right from the start. We drilled into a heart and showed it was the Gordian knot. So we've changed history, science, and theology. The Most High Spirit had expected nothing less, although we were shocked every step of the way. Stellium 7 called us that day. We made that video. We saved it. We have the phone. We have the length of the call. the questions asked, and our explanations about the helical heart. The body parts are stones. And this was before he made one video. And I do believe now that it was so that they could take it in another direction away from God to, you know, really the stones are trees. That's where the gold comes from, and nothing to do with God. We're not playing that. No. Stellium 7 called while Randy was visiting with his wife, Joan. We shared the facts with Mike, the hacker prince. And it seemed like he went to his other friends and found a way to leave the Bible out of the Heartstone story. Not that he hasn't done some amazing work on proving that the stones are biological, biogenetic, and he's very proud of the biogenetic term, and I think I would be too. But those people will not be encompassed about in the camp of saints. And again, I appreciated that video from Theron about the camp of the saints. I do want to re-emphasize that my goal was not to, I didn't want him to prove flat earth. Nobody needs any proof that the earth is flat. We know it. The Bible teaches it. Our senses show it to us. They're not going to let somebody go up there and expose their lie. I'm trying to help you not die. And that is my only motivation. And save a little money along the way. That type of thing also. Nobody commenting. From 9 minutes and 13 seconds and before that, I know that there's people watching. I just want you to say, hey, every now and then. An air surveyor. Well, we were down on the ground, man. We were doing it with a theodolite and pins and sticks and logarithm books. But hats off. We all get suckered into there. Hey, what is this? You know, let's just talk. Let's just start off right here, right now. Who's this? And what is Castrato? What is going on here? Yeah, somehow we're taking a turn right now. Got these tabs pulled up. I told you I had a Bible study pulled up, and it was going to start like with, hey, what's going on back with this fascination when Satan got loose? You know, 1711, Satan gets loose, and all of a sudden, everybody up in the world, all the way to Hitler begging, oh, please play some Wagner for you. And we're supposed to believe that everybody's going like, I love opera so much, I'm going to go there and sit for 3 hours, pay all the money in the world to do it. But after Satan was loose, there, you know, that's when their history starts saying all of these mudflooders, you know, this is how they fit it into their history here, their fabrication. Here's Quinto Fabio, the drama, you know, the musical drama. This is the name of everybody would have used to know this as a famous opera. I just found it out. So here's the floor plan of it. They might say it looks like a magnet. They claim it looks like a kind of a horseshoe. You see it? It kind of looks like a horseshoe. I looked around and nobody else thinks it looks like a magnet except me. And I hope some of you think it looks like a magnet. I do. Big deal. Anyway, she's not a castrati, but she's the first woman to actually sing. So when was this? She wasn't even born until 1776, but she's the first woman to sing there. They're doing all that other singing. Men were doing it. The castrati. Yikes, at a doodah. Theater built by Tony de Albert, just because they had to have more opera and they had more than enough money. Why not? So, and here he goes again with this. I know people love this. This theater was the first one, but it got demolished in 1697 because the Pope thought public theaters were a corrupting influence. There's this other, okay, here's what they called it, a phonetic curve. Yeah, maybe for something in the voices, either 32 boxes. I guess that some are, these are the 32 boxes. You ever see that? Like those movies that they film in the Mudflood buildings and they're sitting in those opera house boxes. It didn't, the President Lincoln got the bushwhacked and backstabbed in the back of the head in a box like that. Turns out that after a number of fires, reinaugurate the magnetic phonic weapon. 1718. I'm just skipping down right here. The management eventually passed to the Knights of Malta, and I've heard they were the bad guys. And that was just within boom, within a couple of years. But look at there. The theater was, everybody loved it. Your operas are fantastic, but they couldn't charge enough money. And the matters weren't helped by a year of Jubilee in 1725 was declared by the Roman Pope. And so all Roman theaters had to be closed, but still pay taxes. And so they got confiscated by the Knights of Malta. Seems right on, what's new, right? Isn't that the way they do it? Where's that thing about? I was going to click right on the castrati, and we were going to just roll right into another episode. Oh, I think I have to go back. Well, these are the things established in 1718 in the Papal States. Only 2 things. We didn't look at this. What's this? That's a mudflooder. Yeah. Okay. Oh, it's right there in the Basilica. This got established in 1718 too. That's right after the Satan's been loosed in somebody's theology. It's not a Jesuit anyway. And I didn't think of it when I was old and doddering. I thought of it when I was young and not doddering. Man, I was really into the Papal States. That's all you get. That's it. I thought this would be easier to read, this old Italian. Still is tricky. Matter of fact, I'm not even going to attempt it. Some of the footnotes seemed easier, but I may go back and translate some of it, but don't worry about it. I'm going to slide that over here. What's this? Oh, I must have. Yeah, I wanted to, I wasn't familiar with this word, dramaturgia, as I was trying to work my way through that. I wonder why I left that up. So looks like I searched it. Let's look at it. Oh, it's an opera. Okay, these guys loved operas. Something about them. This guy's 1709. He was already getting, I guess they were all getting ready for it. This is just another picture of an opera. The year looks good. Are there any U's in it? Because they weren't supposed to have that. No U's as of the lost colony of Roanoke, but I don't see any U's in there, but I'm not really looking that hard. Because I feel like I wanted to find that castrati thing, and then it's like, well, okay. Well, I guess that's too gross for us to even consider. Love of a shade means love of a ghost. So that's what their operas were about. They were all about maybe preparing people for the Darwinism or something. Gee whiz. Weird. See what else we got here. Oh, hey, guess what? It's a shade, it's a ghost. More Italian? Please. Oh, I had it translated before. So here's that Romanian language thing. Latin was introduced in Romania, Bulgaria is very important. Very important. Introduced at certain times. Proto-Romanian Rome, and then later on, let's kill the Romans. And remember, a lot of the Romans were God-fearing Greeks. The centurion, I can name a bunch of them, tons of them. Thanks for commenting, Yvette. Yeah, it did look like a magnet. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, or something like that. Otherwise, why would they do that? Why would they do it? Hallelujah. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. Back. We got that whole, we're learning a lot tonight. And remember, cut it out, share parts of it. I know you can't share the whole video. People think you're crazy. You want me to watch this? You're nuts. They'll act like you're the crazy one, that you should learn something in 10, 15 minutes and then get back to the Simpsons. Not you guys, but that's what they're thinking. Romanian language. Last time a major coup ended up with the death of somebody being hung in public was 1988. I think it was Nicolae Ceausescu in Romania. And I ended up with a couple of sisters that played volleyball for me for all 4 years. And it was so much fun. And, they were only able to leave and come to the United States and enter our John Birch CIA-sponsored homeschooling Christian front because of that revolution. It was good times. At the time, it seemed like good times. For example, the principalities, what were they finding in these scraps of the Proto-Romanian principalities? Chivalristic literature, that means chivalry, similar to the Western one, did not develop due to an exceptional historical context. The Romanian principalities were for centuries frontier territory where local lords clashed with forces whose main objective was booty. It should be noted, for example, that the last Tartar invasion took place shortly after the loosening of Satan in 1717, in 1758, in what they call a new enlightenment of, Rosicrucian secret society, Knights of Malta taking crap over. This will never get old because every night it seems like there's just more and more stuff coming out. And where are they going to get their new information for their new once a week videos? They could just pick out 5 or 10 minutes of one of these videos, expand on it, and make gold. Troubadours, historic poems written by those. Wow. We'll never finish unless I get going. So the Church Slavonic, they spoke that Romanian. This is an example of their work. See any U's in there? Oh, I do. There's another one. I don't even know what's going on. Hey, look, that's supposedly the creation of Adam. How big that fauna is. There's some characteristics of the Russian Church Slavonic computer topography. Now, the United States has gone with the Celtic, don't slip me, Bluetooth Ogham stones for our computer language. So it's good to know that the Russians are banking on the Slavic. Too bad they're all tied into the Ogham stone one of the United States internet, and it's going down in 2038. That's a bonus. It's what we call a bonus in this content providing situation. Now I'm just finishing the cigarette. You know that every time you exhale pure organic tobacco, it takes your prayers straight to God. It is incense to him. And you don't even have to form the words. It carries the intention of your heart through the nicotine. Through the nicotine. That's why they hate it. That's why they poison it with phosgene, formaldehyde, and 216 other ingredients that they put in a sacred herb that I would rather stop smoking marijuana than tobacco. As long as I, in my heart, believe that the tobacco was safe for me, and I do. Also appears, this language anyway, appears in the services, so this same language, these new Slavics traced from that Romanian, is Russian, man. All these people. Even Bulgaria. See, I called it Bulgaria again because I want you to tie it every time, Bulgaria, the Nazi country, to, that nobody talks about, Transylvania and all that, to Ian Fleming, Aleister Crowley, and eating the children and stuff. That's what that chitty chitty bang bang was all about. Yeah, gross, I know, but we don't have to, we just have to know it once. We don't have to dwell on it. So in addition, these languages were also here, and here. It's used in some churches today, and all the new things, the old believers, we've studied them and their persecution, forcing to shave off their beards, making the women take off their bonnets and shawls. Just tragic biblical disobedience. I couldn't explain to you in the time remaining how important this part of my study was. But we got to move on. I got too much. So here's this Kiev Psalter. It was also written in that language. It's very important in proving that the Islam is fake and that they were just using, none of these people that lived away from the papists, and actually remember how far away, it was like on the frontier. They weren't having, when they finally tried to impose their Trinity on them, it was, hey, look, we're not a fighting people, but we don't appreciate you killing us, saying that we have to believe in something, because all of these manuscripts and beautiful things that they've been, this is what really Rome is hiding. And it doesn't matter if you get in the Roman Vatican's basement, you can't read that stuff. I can't read that stuff. We have to, unless we start studying now, assuming they're lying and that what the Lord is, he hasn't led me wrong yet. It's not like I'm out there retracting anything, when the Lord says, go, let's check this out, I'm still saying that 10 years later. My visions are clear and it's Bible based. It's not a whim of, is it a tree? Are there no trees on flat earth or anything else? This has all been tracked back to here and to 1948 United Nations and the 1958 founding of DARPA and NASA at the same time, and the admission of the Operation Paperclip, and the rewrites exposed. The mafias know it, but they don't care. They don't care. It's not only that Psalter, all of the good Psalters that basically are going to teach one thing, that they're not Trinitarian, but they love the Lord with all their hearts, souls, and minds. And the encroachment was Rome and the Trinity. How far did these scandals go? Well, one of the letters about the John Birch mentioned that while he was away fighting in the war, he was writing letters to a Marjorie Tooker. I just highlighted her name at the left. They keep her letters at Yale because it seems she is also a missionary from Yale that ended up missionarying and running into the famous John Birch. And they have a list of all her letters. Most of them are, way before she met while she was doing her missionary duties to her siblings and parents, to her siblings and her parents, to her siblings and her parents, to her sister Dorothy, from Marjorie to Yale Changsha. From 42, 43, the time period when she knew John Birch when he wasn't in prison with the other missionaries. And then after, it's just back to this. They kept all her letters at Yale because she's a famous missionary. She's probably a real, maybe. Who knows, right? So the 1924 Olympics is when I basically stumbled on the runner from the Chariots of So this was one of their first big things, after the reset, 1888 to 1913, when they finally subjected all the blacks and enforced the eugenics one-drop law, and everybody was comfortable in their Darwinism, and they wanted to get back to overtly Greek religions and fought in their war, in their culture, and in their sexual lives. These new games were, put out there, and they had some competition, not the 4th of July, but the opening was held on the 5th of July. The games were the second to be hosted in Paris, making it the first city to host the Olympics twice. The United States has hosted the Olympics twice. 2 presidents have said they are declaring these games open. Do you know who they were? 2 presidents have declared the games open. There's your trivia. If you want to put it in the comments, I can wait a couple of seconds. In 1924, the selection process consisted of 6 people that wanted to do it. Paris, Amsterdam, Barcelona, that's Spain, Los Angeles, Prague, and Rome. So they lost a lot of money, but it was a hefty loss in there. But the crowds were there, 60,000 people a day in 1924 to watch this white-only event. They had some interesting things. The flying Finns were there, dominating their long distance running. The other heroes were made. I stumbled upon the famous runner, Eric Lidle, the Olympic champion who wouldn't run on the Lord's Day, on a Sunday, refused. And so he entered a contest that, he was famous for running the 100-yard dash, and he ended up winning the 400-yard dash. This is some propaganda. Like, we're into the Olympics now because we're all normal and we're going to normal schools. We're going to get on one page and discover nations, and then we'll kill each other later. Yay. These were the sports involved in those games. In it, they had some demonstration sports I've never heard of. I've heard of canoeing. Jeu de Paume. You going to tell me you heard of that? They don't even list it anymore. So here's some of those people that famously won. They had a art competition in the Summer Olympics. The Summer Olympics are this year along with the election. How do you think that's going to go over? Going to put that in the comments too? I wonder if anybody correctly put in the comments or even guessed. Let's see. Missionary work. Hey, they got Zeppelins there. The 2 presidents, the first was Ronald Wilson Reagan, and then the other one was William Jefferson Clinton, opening Olympics in the United States and saying famously, they declare the games open. The reason the early Olympic competitions had art was because the Delphic Games had arts. There's still a Delphic game. We'll look at them. They're trying to pump out that art. So the 1894, they finally got around to saying, hey, let's have some white only sports competition. We think it'll be fun. And everybody said, yeah, let's go. Let's do it. Let's celebrate that Greek culture. And along the way, we can get it by the time 2024 comes around. They're going to be probably mandating that you take condoms that have tracking devices or something. Who knows? Who knows? They had the art competition from 1912 to 1948 and help you be reminded of what I'm talking about. It sometimes they also wanted time or another. There were suggestions to include dancing, film, photography, and theater. Never happened. Breakdancing will be included in. Well, it is about time. It's about time, man. So here's the designed Mudflood Stadium for 1928. That's pretty big, nice. I guess it's kind of like an obelisk, but I'm not going to say a hidden energy because I'm remaining vaguely neutral on whatever the heck's going on with that. That seems to be rugby or wrestling. There's a two-time Olympian. You know, that wouldn't have, they would have let that Jim Thorpe. Wasn't an Indian. Did he go to the Olympics? Maybe they let the Native Americans go. What was the standard on who could compete? How'd you get in there? So there's some LGBTQ artists at the Olympics games, whatever that means. So I guess they were declaring it back in the day, or did they just go back in history and say we're putting them out of the closet? Because I don't think this was a time really when people, from what they tell us, this is, everything back then was always, we'll kill you if you're gay and stuff. So maybe it wasn't like that. Hey, here's this, the Delphi Oh, I hope it wasn't off for too long. Michael Servetus was sharing, maybe, so you saw some of it. It was 9:50 when she said it. It could have been a few minutes. I'm going to read the section about Michael Servetus one more time. Michael Servetus, what we need to know is that the aversion to his death, signaling the birth in Europe of the idea of religious tolerance. How far have they extrapolated that today? Other nations are studying it. The United Nations is studying it. United States is not. I've tried to. Now, they track it from the Polish American scholar, Evolution of Freedom of Conscience, John Locke, Thomas Jefferson, to the American Declaration of Independence. Jesus died for your sins, but historically speaking, Michael Servetus died so that freedom of consciousness could become a civil right in modern society. Did you know?
It is one of America's oldest unsolved mysteries, and it happened in our own backyard. What happened to the lost colony of Roanoke?
The research has drawn people from across the globe to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. 10 on your side's Kayla Gaskins is following the story. And Kayla, this international team believes they may now know what happened.
Well, that's right. The leaders of this team say what they've found is very exciting and very convincing. Now, there are a lot of competing theories about what exactly happened, and the team working on Hatteras Island believes there's enough proof to show that's where at least some of the colonists likely went. 20 years before Jamestown, Sir Walter Raleigh attempted to found the first permanent English colony in North America.
Female-related artifacts are important because the 1587 colony is the only one that brought women.
In August of 1587, 115 people crossed the Atlantic, settling on Roanoke Island Post. The Croatoans were a friendly tribe. They lived on Hatteras Island.
This one being thicker like this would have been more toward the middle or the bottom of the bowl.
Scott Dawson is a native of Hatteras and a hobby archaeologist. He grew up hearing the stories.
I saw a lot of artifacts coming up when people were building houses or sometimes from a river.
Hatteras every spring.
It's our history and heritage as well as yours. It's part of that shared story.
Under layers of dirt, the team found what they came for.
We did test the isotopes. It did.
Ruptions and disagreements and people walking out and things. So it's not unlikely that one group might have gone up the Chesapeake towards the Chesapeake, up the Albemarle. But I'm pretty confident that one group at least, and probably the substantial part, come out to Hatteras Island.
I think that it's almost a duty to learn about it. This is the birth of America, and this is the real story.
It's a story of failure, but these failures are what the success of our nation is founded on.
It's